Well, here's something that seems like you hear about every day also, because people never let it rest because there's still controversy over it to this day. The steroid trial of Vince McMahon in the early 90s, the federal government, the prosecution. I mean, there's so many conflicting stories that people tell or that they still believe about all this thing, including, whether or not Jerry Jarrett was really going to run the company if Vince went to jail. You have covered the steroid trial, and for the first time that I can remember, one of the participants discussing this on a television program is Vince's own Clarence Darrow, Johnny Cochran, etc., Jerry McDevitt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a big get, as they say in the talk show business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, one of those stories that is undeniable in terms of, one that we've wanted to tell. People have wanted us to tell. One of the more significant, if not the most significant, sort of out of the ring story in wrestling of the 90s. And for us, it was always about trying to get the right people to talk before doing it because, it's a big story. It's a huge story in terms of just, all the twists and turns and the whole saga of, you're talking about two different trials. You have the trial of Dr. George Zahorian and how that dovetailed into Vince McMahon getting indicted by the federal government and all the kind of, things at play sort of in between the two, and of course afterwards. And so for us, Jerry was key in telling the story, mainly because, he orchestrated, along with his team, of course, the defense, and the defense is a masterclass in terms of, you're going to learn that the prosecution's case was a little odd in terms of how they went about prosecuting it. But again, Jerry going in so deep and researching everything about steroids, becoming really one of the more foremost experts of the subject at the time, and coming in and really dismantling the case. And it's really wild, when the federal government prosecutes as a high profile case like that, for the defense to not call a single witness is almost virtually unheard of. And that really means that, obviously Vince McMahon, spoiler alert, was victorious in this case. But, that means really the strength of Jerry and his defense team cross-examining their witnesses is purely the reason that he got, that Vince won the case.
Why did the federal government think that they had, obviously thought that they had so much of a better case than they actually had? And was it because of the connection to Zahorian, or did Vince just do what Vince does sometimes and piss somebody off with his arrogance? Why was the government prosecuting it? Did they actually think it was grander than it actually was, this big conspiracy that, and I'm not trying to take up for Vince, but the standing alone, that was not, with this just being Joe and Tom somewhere, that was not a case that the federal government would have lost a lot of sleep over.
Well, the thing that's really interesting about it is actually at the end of the day, the charge that's stuck going into the trial is whether or not Vince McMahon, Titan Sports, defrauded the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. So it is
that's the code book right next to when you rip the tag off the mattress,
right? So it was in the trial, obviously there was a link between Zahorian and or that's what the prosecution had seen, was this perceived link. When Zahorian got put away, his attorney had sort of made some comments that, which you'll see in the episode, that kind of tipped some people off. It was a swirling, a lot of different factors coming in. You had Phil Mushnick of the New York Post, who was writing articles about, investigating, Vince, and there was hypocrisy with Hulk Hogan admitting on Arsenio Hall. And you had also the law just changing. The steroid law, steroids were being classified as something different going from the late 80s to the early 90s. And so it really, all these factors, kind of played into, the WWE being investigated. And of course, in Zahorian's office, they saw the grand photo of Zahorian standing with Vince and Hogan and drawing these parallels. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of factors which you'll see covered in the episode. But yeah, you never know what going into the trial can happen, and again, talking about at the start of the interview, we talked about these significant moments in the wrestling business that were seismic changes, cultural changes, and to think a kind of what if, if a charge stuck and a jury found him guilty, how different things would have potentially unfolded, at least at that time. So I think in that grander context, it's really fascinating, but also how we look at steroids, now as then. And it's just, it's one of those stories that, is huge. And, we're still working on it. It's not done. We're still actively editing the episode right now because that will be the season finale at the end of October there.